Hi, everybody. So thank you for joining. I know end of the day, it's hard to get here this late in the afternoon. You're thinking about traffic going home, right? I have to admit, I'm from upstate New York. My idea of a traffic jam right now involves deer in the middle of the road, so it's slightly different. I don't know what you're going through, but I hope at least you can find the next 15 to 20 minutes incredibly useful. So I had a very interesting day one Friday. In fact, it was May 5th, 2000. Do you remember where you were on May 5th, 2000? No clue. 20 years ago, right? So that day, I was an information systems specialist working for a mid-sized city public safety IT department. Mid-size, Cambridge, Massachusetts. There you go. We were responsible for the computers and the networks and the servers for police, fire, and 911. Emergency communications. And well, this was 2000, so we were also responsible for the printers and the fax machines and the radios and pretty much anything that contained a battery and an electronic signal. So we went through our day, and then May 5th hit. Friday morning, I got an email from a firefighter, subject line, "I love you." Yeah, now you know what day May 5th was, right? Yep. So emails with "I love you" in the subject line from a firefighter, probably not my normal course of business. And then I got one from a police officer and a dispatcher and my boss. Well, at that point, he only beat me to the server room to pull out the server plug because his legs were longer. It was the "I love you" worm. And for me, this was such a critical day because it's the day I first figured out what cybercrime was. We had been talking about it, but this was the first time I had been in a business environment where we were the victims of cybercrime. My boss and I then spent a couple of days rebuilding our email server and all the computers on our network to get rid of the "I love you" worm. Okay, this got me into it. Now I admit it, I'm a cybersecurity geek. I am definitely a geek on this stuff. So I dig into cybercrime, and over the next few years as I went through my career, I watched it evolve. And in 2005, 2006, it really became a financial thing. We had this situation where financial motivations for cybercrime were a big deal. And then we had nation-state actors, or as like we like to say back in the FBI, I can't tell you who it is, but we call them APT, Advanced Persistent Threat. And then in 2013, we could say, oh, it's China. When we say APT, we really mean Russia or China. That's the threat. So life went on. The interesting thing we have reached at this point is we are at one of these similar places. Cybercrime and cybersecurity are developing right now in a really unique way. Now, I will admit, this is my own term. I keep trying to get it out there. Please tweet it for me, #strawopportunistic. I am determined. I'm going to get this in Webster's. This is my goal. Strawopportunistic. So we are in a unique position. It used to be that cybercrime was either opportunistic or strategic. When it was opportunistic, it was spray and pray. Everybody got it. 10 million people got that piece of email, and they hoped 1% of them clicked on it, and 1% of those actually fell for the malware and got infected. No big deal, opportunistic. And then we had strategic cybercrime start, where they decided, I know who you are. I'm going to target you specifically. This is where spear phishing and APT came into play. And so things evolved. Well, over the past 2-ish years, what we have started to see is strawopportunistic. I told you, #strawopportunistic. This is a case where opportunistic melds into strategic and vice versa. We are seeing them come together. Now, BEC is probably the best example of this that I can actually think of. You've heard of it. Even if you don't realize you've heard of it, you know business email compromise scams. It's that email you get that says, hey, it's the CEO or the mayor or the president of your company that comes out and I need you to make a direct deposit change request for me, or I need you to do this, or buy gift cards, or wire transfer money to China for this secret deal. We're seeing all of these variants. All it is an email. That email scam is responsible for $1.9 billion in losses last year, according to the Internet Crime Complaint Center, IC3. As of last week, 49% of all of IC3's 2019 complaints were drawn from BEC. Those losses, 1.9 billion. So huge amounts of money. Almost half of all the cybercrime is from an email. Now, personally, I work for a company called Center for Internet Security, CIS, and we run the MS-ISAC, the Multi-State Information Sharing and Analysis Center. You know we're government funded because we have long acronyms. So we are very lucky. We are funded by CISA for the express point of helping state and local governments. And unfortunately, BEC scams is something I see across state and local governments on a really routine basis. They still fall for them. We are dealing in the past 2 weeks with newspaper headlines saying hundreds of thousands of dollars wire transferred out of the country because somebody fell for an email. Now, an email like this seems pretty simple. But here, have you ever thought about how they get your name? Why they pick your company? This is a case of opportunistic targeting. That BEC list, and I have seen them, is a mail list of all the email addresses they can get. 500,000 email accounts. They go down the list, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, I'm gonna pick you. And they target you. And it becomes strategic. They go and do research about who you are, who's in your company. In the case of the direct deposit one, who should they send this email to? They pull your change request form for a direct deposit change and fill it out for you. And then they send it to your HR department. So it's very specific targeting. Now, the largest one of these I have heard of was $40 million. One person, one paycheck, $40 million. Apparently it was bonus week at this company and it was the president of the company. They won't tell me which company. I think they're afraid I'll take a job. The other variant we see out of this, very specifically within state and local governments, has to do with purchase orders. And these are the ones that have made a lot of headlines in the past year. They get a copy of the purchase order and send it to a vendor in the state or local government's name. Now, I don't know how anybody thinks it's realistic that some K-12 school had a $50,000 bake sale to buy computer equipment for Africa, but that's what happens. $50,000 bake sales, computer equipment goes to Africa. And then the vendor comes back and asks the school, well, I need you to pay for this purchase order, and the school sits there going, I don't know what you're talking about. The reverse happens when they go after a vendor. So they'll go after a construction company or a water utility or somebody else and say, hey, I need to change accounts. And they will either change accounts so the vendor is paying who they think is the state or local government, or they'll change accounts so the state or local government thinks they're paying the vendor. Either way, that money is actually getting siphoned into a different bank account and it's going to the cyber criminals. Now, these are clear, easy cases where we have a problem that they are opportunistically picking a list from a list of victims and then digging in and finding more information to strategically target somebody on that list. We can take this further. I look at the top 10 malware. The top 10 malware for my company means a lot. So we monitor state and local governments. Currently, we've got about 560 sensors around the country, monitoring all 50 states, hundreds of local governments. It's about 48 petabytes of data per month. If you're not sure what a petabyte is 1,024 terabytes. So I have 48,000 terabytes of data per month to look at. We look at the top 10 malware because, as you can clearly see on the graph behind me, the top 10 malware is actually responsible for a large percentage of what we see when it comes to malware. It is predominant. You notice at the bottom of the list there is something called Emotet. And then there's a few other things in the list, like Cerber. Well, Cerber and CryptoWall that hits these lists are that big bad ransomware, that ugly black elephant in the room that we've been dancing around all day. When I'm talking about ransomware, I talk about a couple of different things, though. I'm talking about opportunistic ransomware, and I'm talking about strategic ransomware. I'm also talking about lockers, which is old school, the stuff that showed up back in 2010. And I'm talking about crypto, the stuff that makes the news. What Brad was talking about with SamSam, that's crypto ransomware. We also have another nasty little variant called wiper ransomware. Wiper ransomware gets on your system, and instead of locking your system or encrypting your files, it starts erasing them. And it erases your files until you pay. Now, you would think the only way out of this is, okay, I've got backups. Ransomware has gotten really good. Those actors know that you think this. So opportunistic ransomware is going with a basic economic theory that says equilibrium point. Yeah, if I charge $200 to $1,000 roughly, more people are likely to pay it. Spray and pray, opportunistic. The more people I can get to pay, the more money I will make. So I'm going to keep my price point really low. Strategic ransomware takes the opposite approach. They dig into you. They find out information about your company. They get on your network and spend days there, and then they go after your backups and the other types of things that's going to make it really hard for you to recover. Once they have managed to make it hard for you to recover, that's when they encrypt your network. So we are seeing that very strategic, tailored approach with ransomware right now. We are seeing a couple of trends related to this. In 2019, they went after K-12 governments a lot. If you were paying attention to the headlines, there were quite a few schools who got hit. They had all kinds of impacts. As emergency managers, this suddenly becomes relevant. Your K-12 school can't return from break because they don't have the computers. They can't issue an exam or check in students because their computers aren't running. These are kinds of things, problems that emergency managers can solve. Another trend we saw among all this is round about August, they figured out it was very prolific if instead of targeting one entity, they targeted one entity that had connections to multiple other entities. So strategic targeting that became opportunistic. If they could get a veterinary office to infect all of the connected veterinary offices, then they could in one fell swoop put ransomware on 400 different companies' computers. There are headlines from around the country where they have done this, cases ranging from 22 different entities to more than 400 entities being hit because they got ransomware onto a single entity and it spread like wildfire. The other thing we saw develop at the end of the year was a name and shame game. This was a fairly base concept that they would exfiltrate your data. They would grab your data, bring it outside of the company network, and then encrypt everything on your company network. When they did that, they said either pay us or we will expose it. So now you not only have the threat of you losing your data, you have the threat of everything being released publicly. Name and shame. And in some cases, if you didn't pay fast enough, then they released it anyways, even though you still paid. Just wasn't quick enough for them. So we saw these trends develop. But here's the thing about all of this. Have you ever stopped to think about how they target you? Why you are that K-12 school or that particular private company that it gets hit with cyber extortion? These ransomware demands that are $10,000 or more likely, $500,000 or $2 million at this point? The reality is they actually originate from other places on your network. So this is the top 10 malware that we see coming across state and local government networks. Black is ransomware. That's the stuff I worry about. That's the stuff that makes the headlines, except for it's the opportunistic stuff. Opportunistic ransomware is asking $200 to $1,000, and most of the time we can defeat it. Not always, but some of the time. The stuff in green are info stealers and banking Trojans. Now, when an info stealer gets on your network, it steals information. That's its whole goal. Maybe it wants information like all your contacts, or maybe it wants information like your password so it can spread further across your network. Banking Trojans particularly like passwords for bank accounts. So they go after your passwords for your bank accounts, they know when you're logging in, and they grab information and do a wire transfer on your behalf from your bank account. We see businesses go out of business because of banking Trojans. Zeus has been on this list since 2006. It is the longest running top 10 malware that I have ever seen. There has never been a month where the Zeus banking Trojan was not on the MS-ISAC top 10 list. So let's take this a step further. Emotet. Emotet is an information stealer that is particularly nasty. It jumped to the United States a couple of years ago, and it has a few different ways of spreading. It likes to grab your information, your contacts, your passwords, and spread through your network. What we see when we see an Emotet infection is a 95% compromise rate on your network. 95% of your network has to be rebuilt from scratch to get rid of this malware. Now, if you're thinking ransomware is going to cost you $500,000 to pay that ransom, let me tell you it's a lot more than that. Because ransomware costs you to rebuild your network, just like Emotet does. So in both of these cases, if you have a large network, you're going to spend millions of dollars and weeks without your computer system. They're just going to be down. You're not going to be able to access email or anything else as your entire network is rebuilt. Now, here's the thing about Emotet. Emotet also makes its money by dropping other malware. So it drops a particularly nasty piece of malware called TrickBot. It also is known to occasionally drop Zeus, the banking Trojan. Both of these are banking Trojans, and we see them get onto networks because Emotet is there first, and then they land on the network because Emotet put it on your network. Well, they get access to your network, and you find out because your employees suddenly come to you and say, one-click shipping from Amazon just shipped to Africa. Any idea why? Well, that's a lot of your employees getting hit by TrickBot or Zeus. It's grabbing the passwords and doing one-click shipping. We see bank transfers from Zeus, hundreds of thousands of dollars to a foreign bank account. So that's bad enough. Now you've got Emotet on your network. Your network is fully compromised with Emotet. You've got TrickBot or Zeus or both on your network. And in some cases now, we see that TrickBot says, oh, you look like a really good strategic target for ransomware. So TrickBot becomes a downloader to drop ransomware, and in particular Ryuk, which is responsible for about a quarter of the SLTT government ransomware infections last year. So we are looking at a massive daisy chain here. Your network is fully compromised by multiple pieces of malware. You've had money wire transferred out. You've had employees lose their own money. Amazon click ship to other places. And then you get ransomware on your network if you're really unlucky. Chances are it's going to take you about 3 to 4 weeks to rebuild your network, preferably with the help of some of the people who were here earlier today talking to you in this room. But it's going to be $1 million cost. So this is opportunistic. This is where we had opportunistic infections via email, where that email dropped Emotet or TrickBot, and it changed into a strategic targeting based on Ryuk. That's how it gets on your network. That's why we care about it. And that's why this is the stuff that keeps me up at night. Now, for all that we talk about this, The reality is malware is only a very small percentage of what the MS-ISAC actually sends out the door. Right now, 87% of the 8,000 notifications we sent last month were non-malware related. They were related to other things. It was attempts to hide traffic, attempts to scan your network to see if you had a particular type of device, or to see if you had a vulnerable type of device. This type of information becomes incredibly useful if you find it. So this is where we see those millions of interested scans a day. 87% of what we're sending out is related to non-malware, but it's only the ransomware that makes the big headlines. Here's the other topic that I really worry about, third-party access. Just like those ransomware incidents where we had ransomware get on your network because your network was connected to somebody else's network, there are lots of cases where you've got somebody on your network already because you invited them in the door. A third-party supplier. DJI was the latest to make this list because DJI is a drone company that is manufacturing their drones in China. It's a Chinese firm. The National Defense Authorization Act and other federal acts, the CISA, BODs, the directives that say do not have this software on your federal networks, all name these companies as places and entities you should not buy from or have on your network. Now, I can't tell you if you should or shouldn't. That's a call for you to make. That's that risk analysis you have to choose. What I can tell you is paying attention to this makes a huge difference. 2 weeks ago, Avast made the list. Not because they're from a foreign country, but because it turns out that everybody who had Avast was collecting your information. According to a motherboard report, Avast would then go out, watch what you were typing in, watch your searches, and connect the dots. And then it sold that information to a lot of big companies. Supposedly you were anonymized, supposedly. But if you typed in and went to a URL that indicated who you are, it was easily able to detect and uniquely identify your internet traffic. So these third-party suppliers have become another large issue that we worry about within cybercrime. It's one of these developing issues that we're tracking. Which brings me to the end point. What can you do? Now, this is a pretty simple list. My understanding is most of the folks in this room, not cyber experts. If you're a cyber expert, you probably recognize the name CIS because CIS actually runs the CIS controls and benchmarks, which are the really detailed good lists of what to do. But for those of you who are not into the cybersecurity realm, your emergency managers, it's things like patching, making sure you've got good backups so that you're offline and off-site just in case ransomware hits. It means listening to your IT guys. And one of the biggest things I can't emphasize enough right now is sharing intelligence. The reality is that talking with one another, developing that culture, makes a huge difference in cybersecurity. Way back at the beginning, 20 minutes ago or so, I know it's late, you may not remember, it's okay. I was talking about how I got into cybercrime and I came from a public safety background. Well, the reality is these two are converging. It doesn't matter that it's a cyber incident. It doesn't matter that it's ransomware keeping your network offline. What matters is the kids can't go to school, or the department can't bill, or the city hall is down, or the private company can't do something. I can tell you that when you bring a group of cybersecurity nerds into the room, they still need pizza and wings. Yep, they still need to walk through a door. They still need all the other emergency management basics that a good emergency manager knows at the drop of a hat. But the reality is you put someone like me, an introvert, can't you tell, introvert? You put someone like me in charge of a cybersecurity incident, heads down at my keyboard, I can fix it, sure. Don't ask me to coordinate anything else. It was mentioned earlier, National Guard, really good at coordinating things. That's an awesome point, because cybersecurity people are not good at this type of coordination. They're not good at making it all come together in a major incident and thinking of the little details. That's where the emergency managers really come into play. So, I hope this works for you. I hope this gives you a little bit of something to think about, a little bit of something you can take away. Maybe start up a friendly conversation, ask your IT guy or cybersecurity guy to go meet you for coffee. And you can always reach out to me, CIS, MS ISAC, we're here to help. I don't promise to answer my email quickly, but I'll do my best. Thank you. And I think that gives us maybe 30 seconds for questions as well. No questions. Everybody's scared. Okay. Yep, everybody can get that information. If you're a state, local, tribal, or territorial government, you can get more. I know a lot of this room is federal entities, so a lot of you are getting it as well, and we can help facilitate those channels too. And I think, yeah.
Good afternoon, Kirsten Battaglia, Fema Office of Chief Counsel. I am very interested about the point that you made just now about cybersecurity people know how to deal with the cyber problem and how to fix the issue, and the emergency managers know how to get everyone together so that that's coordinated in the most efficient way. So I think something that's really interesting though is that a lot of people, especially like the attorneys that work in emergency management or the emergency management experts, don't know everything about cyber. They don't know what to look for. They don't know what to plan. They don't know who does this little thing, who has to put X over here, who has to get ABC in order. So without getting a certificate or going to some training programs and going to, like, I'll just shorthand it to say cyber school, what do you recommend that people read that are that need to get up to speed on certain very important cyber elements, but that don't necessarily have the cyber background?
Okay, so there are a couple things I would recommend. I'm going to start with classes. I know you said other than that. FEMA actually funds some free online courses through TEACS meant for folks who don't have a cyber background but need that cybersecurity, cyber management skill set, especially emergency managers. There is also the Fed virtual training environment if you're a Fed. Both of these are really great, short, do-at-your-desk classes that can help you. Other than that, what I would suggest is don't try and read. If you want to get caught up on this stuff, there are some really great websites out there. It's hard to learn cyber, though. It's going to take you a couple of months to get to that stage where you start being comfortable. What I like to do is talk to people. For all that I'm an introvert, seriously having a cup of coffee with somebody, talk to them about their worries and concerns. For me, it doesn't matter that I'm using the word ransomware. That translates to you as, okay, the computers are down. Chances are you can figure out what happens if the computers are down, right? And then there are other questions like, does that mean the phones are down too? Okay, that's probably a problem. You can plan around an emergency where the computers are down and the phones are down without understanding the bits and the bytes behind the ransomware itself. Other questions? All right. I think I get to hand it back over to Alex, so thank you very much. You've been great.
Thank you so much. Thank you again, Stacy. Unfortunately, we did learn that Director Krebs is not going to be able to join us this afternoon. He was just pulled away for another urgent matter. So I hope you all will be able to use the few minutes that we'll be giving you back in your day to continue the conversations outside about everything that you've learned so far here today. And with that, to close out the day, I'd like to invite back up to the stage Mr. Jeff Jackson, the Deputy Assistant Administrator for National Preparedness. Jeff.
All right, guys, we made it. When we kicked off the day today, we talked about asking difficult questions, shining the light in places where our adversaries would want to shine the light. And I think just listening to the questions and listening to the speakers up here, that we certainly made a lot of progress in that regard today. I think I certainly would give a shout out to Colonel Rhodes, who, when asked Pete's tough question, said candidly, we probably are not ready. I think that's the mindset that we need to continue to take forward, is that while we've made great strides in how we organize and how we interrelate as a government and across SLTT partners, we're not there yet, and we're not likely to be there in the near future. We do have a tremendous opportunity in front of us with this NLE 2020 to take a giant leap forward in the knowledge that we have and the things that we can work on and the focus that we can continue to have in the next few years. So I think that is a great opportunity. I hope you got something out of today. My suspicion is that you did. I think there was a little something for everybody, from the exercise planner to the player who may just be walking through the door. Certainly would like to take the opportunity to thank Stacy Wright, who, because of the bright lights up here, I can't see where she went, but appreciate her giving the keynote today, as well as all of our presenters. And really the quality of the panel discussion speaks to your engagement here today. And so I just as well thank all of you, whether it's in our personal lives or in our professional lives. Time is the most valuable commodity that we have. And so I appreciate you spending some of your time here with us today. Thank you.